Lots to be thankful for this year. Same can be said for David John Peterson Jr., who has been a pioneer and cornerstone in the industry, which brings us to episode 37, featuring Paolo Benedetti, with David J. Peterson, President and CEO of Watershape University. Enjoy this Master Profile edition. You do not want to miss the next lifestyle event with Ask the Masters on February 27th and 28th. We are being hosted by Bazaza Tile, Laticrete, and Wet Edge, and we're going to get dirty. We're actually going to install paper-faced Bazaza Tile with the backdrop of Laticrete, all at the Wet Edge facility. Enjoy.
Yeah, so here we are with Meet the Masters, and I'm with Dave Peterson. I'm Paolo Benedetti, and we're going to today learn about Dave, what makes him tick.
Thanks, Paul.
So welcome. We're going to kind of start today, just kind of a loose discussion, kind of how you got started in the industry, what kind of made you settle on pools and not bridges or high-rise skyscrapers.
Yeah, well, I think to get into pools, actually, it did start with structures and bridges. I grew up in the Bay Area, and my mom lived in the city, and I would drive over those bridges with her going into town, and I was just, you look up, and it's hundreds of feet up, big steel beams and, rivets the size of this orange knob here, and they were just so big, I thought, that's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to build giant bridges. So I went to Cal Poly thinking I would do structures. And I did a lot of structures. I still do a lot of structures. But what challenged me was water. I think maybe playing with Legos and erector sets got me really familiar with structures. So I think I'm pretty good at it. But the water, I never thought about that till I got to Cal Poly.
And you found that the hardest thing about water is containing it.
Right.
And that seems to be every pool contractor and designer's problem is trying to contain that water.
Yeah, you got to contain it. And then, of course, that was the civil and environmental engineering department. So I got into, the biology and the chemistry of water treatment, wastewater treatment, and really ended up concentrating in water resources by the time I was done.
Now, you originally started out, it's your first job out of college. Remember you said you went to work at SeaWorld?
Well, SeaWorld was one of the clients.
Okay,
that was the type of work that we did. It was a company called Enertech, and we did life support systems for large aquariums and marine mammal exhibits. So we had clients like SeaWorld, the Shedd Aquarium in Chicago, the Monterey Bay Aquarium, lots of projects really all over the world. And so I really cut my teeth on very large swimming pools for killer whales
with
or
very
dolphins.
large pipe and very large valves and very, very big pumps.
Yes.
Yeah.
Compared to the scale of a residential or even commercial swimming pool, things were blown up a lot larger in that industry.
So do you often draw on some of that expertise as far as like water treatment from your aquarium days forward to?
I do, actually. Yeah, particularly when I'm doing mechanical design, I'm often thinking about, hydraulic stuff that I learned, back in the late 90s, mid 90s, really. I started there before I'd graduated. In 1994, I was working for that company before I finished up at Cal Poly.
Do you find that the pool industry is a little behind the times with the technology that's being used in some of these other industries? Because I know, for instance, aquariums and animal support systems were using UV and ozone treatment to treat that water, because obviously it has to be chemical free. But they were using basically chemical free systems long before it even became maybe a thought in the pool industry.
Yeah, that's true. And same thing with variable frequency drives. I mean, that was another technology that we had been using for a long time in that industry because, a variable frequency drive on a 25 horsepower pump would save a lot of energy. And when you've got
hundreds of dollars an hour.
Yeah, and if you've got 8 of those lined up, I mean, it's big money. And we didn't really see that in the residential market or even the commercial pool industry for a long time. And you mentioned ozone and UV. It's you can't put chlorine in a fish tank.
Right.
We had to use other alternative sanitizers. So a lot of ozone. You'd strip off any excess ozone, so you'd basically nuke the water coming through and then leave it bubble-free coming out. And UV was another great technology, and we would combine those sometimes. And so now we're seeing that in the pool industry, and we talk about AOP like we just invented it, but it's been around a long time in other industries. So I've been involved with that for quite a while.
So how did you find yourself kind of switching over from doing large marine mammal exhibits to doing pools?
Well, that really started at the time. I was doing a lot of work in Las Vegas with Steve Wynn, particularly. We were working on the Bellagio. The company I was with had done the dolphin pools at the Mirage. I had worked on Siegfried and Roy's Secret Garden for the tigers there. And I was traveling there quite a bit. And I was doing research for a jellyfish system that we were doing at the Bellagio. And I had other travel as well, and it was just too much travel. And I decided that I would probably need to leave that travel behind if I wanted to start a family. And I happened to be on one of those trips during one of the pool shows. Back then, I think it was called the Aqua Show. And my mom was dating Greg Howard at the time, and they were there on that show. And my mom said, "Oh, since you're going to be out here, let's have lunch." And we did. And I happened to tell them that I was thinking about leaving my company to go do something different where I didn't have to travel as much. That rolled into me interviewing with someone that worked with Greg at Polaris Pool Systems. And that turned into a consulting job to coordinate the design and construction of their building, which was Zodiac's headquarters until the last year. Polaris, of course, had merged with Jandy and Zodiac and Nature 2 and continued in that building until just recently. They relocated to Carlsbad. But I was in that office when I at that time had moved 5 buildings into the one. We had 2 injection molding facilities, 2 warehouses, and then the main manufacturing plant for Polaris.
So you started out designing their facilities.
Yeah, I started off designing their building, and then I got everything moved in all under one roof, and I stayed on. I managed their facilities department, oversaw their customer service department, and got into product development. Used my background with chemistry and water treatment. I developed wireless controllers for pools. The EOS system in particular, the Watermatic system. I designed some new pH and ORP control units. And pumps, I've got some patents on things that I did there with pool cleaners. Some of them design patents, some utility stuff, and really got into product development for a while. But after about 5 years of that, I really felt like I was getting too far away from construction. I really liked construction. Getting them into the building was exciting, but that was starting to fade a bit, and I needed to get back into the building trades. So that's when I started my own company back in 2004.
Would you like to get your hands dirty with Ask the Masters? Save the date, February 27th and 28th, 2020.
Okay, and then so then you were building pools for a while, and what was your company?
Initially it was called Torrey Pines Engineering and Construction, and we were kind of known on the streets as Torrey Pines Pools. And that was really, I was doing design and engineering work under Torrey Pines Engineering and Construction. And then I really had this, pool construction side of it called Torrey Pines Pools. And we built a lot of great projects, a lot of, really good clients. And that's when I met Skip Phillips. He had designed a pool for a client, and he wasn't going to build the pool. And that client was a neighbor with one of my sales guys, and they connected, and he liked us. It was a technical pool. Nothing crazy. It didn't have any vanishing edges or anything, but it was a nice design with nice materials, glass tile and everything. And he thought that we would be a good fit to pull it off from an engineering standpoint. So he asked if I would mind meeting with his designer, which was Skip Phillips. I said, yeah, bring him in, which was kind of funny because one of my other sales guys had worked for Skip in a previous life. And I had just...
So it all come around full circle.
Yeah, well, and it was funny because about 2 weeks before this happened, I had told that sales guy, hey, why don't you reach out to this guy, Skip Phillips, and see if we could work together. I don't know what we would do, but, we may have some services that we could offer him on the engineering side. So Skip had come in, and really he was there to interview me. He was, on behalf of his client, was trying to vet our company. And I would say the meeting went pretty well because as he was leaving the parking lot, he was calling me up on his cell phone saying, hey, I got another project you might be interested in. And so that rolled into a series of projects that we had worked with Skip on. He would do the design, and then we would do engineering in-house and go build it. And that's really how I found out about Genesis. We were out on a site one day, and he said, hey, have you ever thought about taking some classes with us? And I went to the Level 1 Design School in Morro Bay.
Cool. And so how many years did you run Torrey Pine pools before you kind of backed out of the construction side?
Well, that's funny because I backed out once and then I backed back into it, and now I think I'm back out again. We did quite a bit of construction, and at one time, the company swelled up to 18 employees, and at that point I felt like I was doing personnel management and not engineering, not design. It was just all about managing people at that point, and I wasn't having any fun. So we decided to start scaling back, and when you have that many people, you've got people calling in sick and problems, and when you make mistakes, you're paying for them. So I started subbing things out, and we just kind of scaled back our crew, and really tightened that up a bit from a personnel standpoint. Got the company a little smaller, but we were still building a handful of nice pools every year. Really kind of focused on higher end stuff.
Were you doing consulting and engineering for other builders at that time, or just still doing some stuff for Skip?
Yeah, not a lot for other builders. We had a handful of other kinds of projects. Sometimes it would be, renovation work on a commercial pool, or it was a tilt-up building or something, because we do things other than just pools.
So how did the consulting and engineering side of the business take off when you formed Watershape's Consulting?
I would say that side always had sort of slow and steady continuous growth, and it's all by word of mouth. Like your business, you don't do a lot. You're not buying ads, right? You're just people find out about you through your network. So we just worked on building that network, and it was probably around 2008 or so. Right around the time when the market crashed, we were cutting back on construction, and naturally the construction was cutting back on us too. It was just hard to find some projects out there. So one of my sales guys, in fact, was kind of saying, it's hard for me to sell a pool right now, and he was right. No one wanted to spend money on pools. So we ended up deciding at that point, let's get out of construction. I can do just fine on the design and engineering side, and if I focus on that, I'm sure it'll even grow faster. Without dedicating any time to construction. So I really got out of it I was out of it in 2009.
At just the right time.
Just the right time. I mean, we wrapped up our stuff and we got out of it. And at that time, I changed the name of the company to Watershape Consulting because I felt like we had an opportunity to reach out to people beyond our local community. Now, everyone knew of Torrey Pines, this very unique tree. It only grows really on this one hillside there in, La Jolla Del Mar area. And we, if we wanted to reach beyond that, we could do that, but maybe not with that name. So I thought, let's go with a name that has no geographic boundaries.
Right.
And so I renamed the company, kind of rebranded it as more of just a consulting firm. And then it took off from there. And I've got some great employees. I've been pretty good, pretty lucky, knock on wood, at finding talented people. In fact, Richard Kramer is just had his 10-year anniversary yesterday.
That's awesome. And Chris has been with you for a long time.
Yeah, she's been there like 8 years, I think, something like that. And so we've had
behind every good man is a very smart woman.
Yes, yes. As my wife says, Krista's the second wife, or my work wife. And I couldn't do it without her. She gets a lot of stuff done and things that I don't even know about. They just take care of it. So
Every pebble in your pool has a story. Come find that story with Ask the Masters on February 27th and 28th, Mesa, Arizona.
With your years that you've been involved with Genesis, is there any one particular course or event or anything that really has kind of stuck with you, where it was something where Dave Peterson actually learned something that you carry forward in your everyday work mantra?
Yeah, well, I'd have to say probably the program that had the most impact on me was actually the Level 1 Design School. And I'll go all the way back to that because at the time...
I would say, why that? Because that was a very basic... Believe it or not, I actually pulled out my red binder the other day.
Yeah?
I was debating with somebody about whether they were in the same Level 1 school I was in.
Right.
So I went and pulled my old binder out because it had all the other
roster.
students' names in there, and I was flipping through it. And I was looking at that screen. Boy, is this amateurish. It's like somebody drew these pictures with a crayon.
Yeah, well, I got a little story to that. But here's why that class, why it sticks in my head, is first of all, it was sort of the first time that I'd really gone back to school in a while. Because I had, after Cal Poly, I was working at Enertech and then Polaris. And while I was at Polaris, I was kind of getting almost like a mini MBA. It's basically an engineering management certificate program at UCSD. But I hadn't gone to any schooling in years.
When did you get your PE? Did you take that right out of school?
No, you have to actually work under another engineer for a couple of years before you can even apply to sit for the exam. So I did that in '98.
Okay.
Actually, right around the time that I left Enertech to go work for Polaris. But getting back to the Level 1 Design School, I hadn't been in school in a while, and I was really going there to study something I really hadn't thought much about. I mean, I knew pools because I'd been in the industry for many years, but I really hadn't thought a lot about the design. I knew I was actually pretty good at it because I liked architecture. I studied a bit of architecture, certainly studied engineering, and I felt like I had some tools that I could use to do things a little bit unique, and think outside of the box. And so my big takeaway from that program was not necessarily the technical things, because actually I thought there were some fundamental flaws even back then.
Right.
But it was inspiration. That's the word I would use, because I went into that program thinking, I'm doing pretty good work, and we were. I mean, I don't want to take that away from the team I had, at the time. We were doing good work, but I was seeing the work of other people that were doing great work, and it was like, oh, we could be doing that. It's like I'm good, but there's a whole other level.
You threw the gauntlet.
Yeah,
the gauntlet had been thrown down.
Hadn't been exposed to that. So the inspiration is what made me start thinking, hey, let's do better. And I was used to getting fees for my consulting time because I was a licensed engineer and I was able to command fees for my work. But I had sales guys that were giving it away for free, doing designs with Pool Studio. And one of those guys was up there taking the class with me, and on the drive down, I said, "That's it. You're not doing that anymore. You're going to charge a fee." And I said, "It just start at $100.
Right.
On the next job you go out, just say it's $100 for the design and see what happens." And sure enough, the next week he came back in and he slaps a check down on my desk, and it was a $100 check. And he said, "I just got $100 to do the design." I said, "Great.
Good. Now it's $500.
Exactly. And so we started ratcheting it up so that he was actually getting some value out of that time.
So he wasn't cold calling anymore. Now he was actually getting compensated.
Now he was actually, and actually doing better design work too, because I think he felt like hey, if I'm getting paid for this, I should probably put a little more effort into it. I got to make it worth their while. Otherwise, that'll be the end of that little program. So, the inspiration was the really neat part about level one. And I do remember some of the technical things that I thought, I'm taking notes going, this isn't quite right. And there's a better way to do this. And, I had notes, and, a week or so after I had gone up there, Skip was in my office. We were meeting about a program, and he's looking at all these drawings that I had on the conference room wall. And he said, with your technical background, I want your honest opinion about the program. What could we do better? Because I really want it to be done right. He was not shy about admitting that he had faults, maybe faults they didn't know about, but that they wanted to fix anything wrong with the Genesis classes. So I said, well, let me tell you about this. So I started talking about hydraulics a bit, and that kind of started into this discussion about, well, maybe you could help us, solve some of these things. And I continued taking classes, and then helped them kind of redevelop the kind of a short program for hydraulics. And I ended up teaching that. I think the first time was at the construction school in Atlanta or something like that. And from that point, it just kept growing. Once I did that, then it was like, I'm telling them, well, I've got enough material to fill a few days if you wanted to. So why don't we look at, doing a big program? And we had other 20-hour programs. So that's when I started with the big 20-hour version.
So do you see yourself continuing to teach? I mean, where's Dave Peterson going? I mean, obviously, Watershape Consulting is very successful.
Yeah, it's going in a couple directions. Obviously, I'm going to keep teaching and keep doing my stuff with Watershape. I also have another kind of startup company that we've actually been doing this for 5 years, but really kind of turned a big corner this year, and that's a company called Event Pools.
Okay.
And what it is we've been...
Just as long as it's not mail order engineering.
No. What Event Pools is it's a modular swimming pool that we use for events. And we've been doing it for 5 years with a particular 3-day music festival called Kaboo. And we just did this down in Dallas at the Cowboy Stadium.
Yeah, you were telling me about that. And they're fully health department compliant, and they meet all the codes. And
Yeah. It's all welded aluminum. It's a 60-foot by 36-foot, 3.5-foot deep gutter pool. It takes 2 flatbeds to get it there. All the equipment is built in. It takes a 200 amp service because it feeds a
They put a
heater.
They put a liner in it.
There's a liner in it, so it's basically all these modules that create the walls and the floor. Each floor and wall module has 8 leveling feet, screw jacks to get the whole pool set level. The liner sits in one of the wall units while it's being shipped, but we basically pull that out and put it on one of the floor modules as we forklift that into place. And then when everything's set up, we just roll it out, roll it over the gutter. We've got custom stainless steel fittings for the lights and return lines and everything. The pipe all is like a twist lock connection. So
like the fire hoses.
Yeah. So in pretty much 2 days, we will set it up and fill it and get it, and it's ready to go.
It's a giant party pool.
It's a giant party pool.
And then how high above? It's 3 feet above grade. Do they put a big deck around it?
It's actually about 5 feet high because there's floor modules, and then the water level's 9 inches down from the deck. And the deck is a porcelain tile decking around it. And then they bring staging up to that. They'll build cabanas, bring in furnishings, and
they can do a full Jimmy Buffett Margaritaville
anywhere. It's a pretty cool little deal. And they'll set it up near a stage usually so that you can hang out.
You store that in your backyard when it's not being used?
No, I stored it in someone else's backyard actually, out in Ramona. I pay them $220 a month, I think, to store it out there. But it's a really fun thing. And so we're working on our next events coming up and stuff.
Cool. You gonna be making some more of those pools?
No, I'd like to get this one on the road a lot more, then we'll see what happens.
A little more
from
utilization.
Yeah.
So, out of all the projects that you've done so far, is there one that like really sticks out? I mean, I know you do a lot of non-disclosure work, NDA work. You don't have to tell us who the project was for or where it was at, but it's got to be one that like really stands out. That not only was it a technical challenge, but was like really, an architectural, masterpiece when it was done.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think I've had several that I thought were architecturally just kind of off the chart cool. Of course, the violin pool that I worked on with, well, I guess I probably shouldn't even say where it is, but
Oh, come on. It's been in every magazine. We've all seen it.
It's in New York, yeah. But that was a great project to work on. And, I didn't do every piece of it, but, it was neat to be involved with that from the start. And, we had concepts that included, having a movie theater under it at one point, and the little vent holes were going to be acrylic windows allowing light to get in there. I mean, it was lots of fun things that we did along the way, but that's one that I think is very recognizable in the industry. Other big, vanishing edge pools that were just very large, 6,000 square foot residential pools. I mean, that's the size of most people's homes,
right,
for sure.
Yep.
And this is just a swimming pool. Pools within pools. Rooftop pools, a lot of acrylic projects. We've got one out in the Hamptons where it's a 75-foot long pool and the whole floor is acrylic.
Wow.
And the pool, it spans that 75 foot. It's a post-tension concrete structure, so it's really just
how did you
supported
deal
on
with
each
the
end.
differential expansion between the acrylic and the concrete and everything wanting to move separately?
Well, you have movement joints between the acrylic and the
Right.
concrete, and it's filled with a material that expands and contracts, and it remains flexible.
So you can literally
for
walk out
years.
underneath the pool and look up like a giant skylight.
Yeah.
The people
Yeah,
swimming
and you
back
could
and forth.
see, and they're avid swimmers, the owners, and you could see them really swimming the whole lap.
So the husband can yell at the wife, "Your stroke looks bad."
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Was that the reason behind it, so they could analyze each other's
No,
strokes? Or it was just for
I think it was
light, or
it was partly for light. I think that the pool was really elevated up at the main level of the house. The master bedroom was down at that lower level, and the way that the berms worked with the beach and everything, you weren't going to get much of a view from the main or from the main floor level down below. You really had to be up top, which is where they wanted the water. But if they just put a big pool out there where their main living space was, then it would have really darkened up, I think, the area of the master bedroom. So to get light there, it kind of made sense to do something really fun.
cool.
Like the acrylic
And now they
walls.
kind of get the dancing, as the water moves up above, they get the dancing light kind of underneath.
Yeah, and even at
reflecting in.
night, when you think about how light dances with
the moonlight
night
and
lights,
stars, yeah.
now that light is dancing down through there and illuminating the patio down below. There's
That's kinda
actually
cool.
another pool and spa at the bedroom level as well.
Cool.
So, yeah, lots of, we've got resort projects where we've done some pretty spectacular work as well.
So tell me about your own pool, because I know there's a lot of pool contractors who don't have a pool in their backyard.
And that's a shame.
I know, it is, really. We should
That
be
should be a
advocates for
rule.
the
That should be everybody's
we should
first
be-
pool, because if they're going to make mistakes,
make it on your own pool.
yeah, do it there first. Yeah, my pool is, I actually don't call it a swimming pool. I call it a social pool. I don't know if I coined that term, but
No.
it's not really meant for swimming. It's very small. It actually measures 20 foot by 16 foot 8 with a corner cut out of that. So it's even smaller than that. But it's really the swimming section, if you will, is 20 feet long with a stair at one end, so you don't even get a full 20-foot length. My son, who's 6'4", if he pushes off of one side, he's got to put his hands out before he hits the other end. And 6'8", he can touch,
side to
side.
right.
His fingertips are touching. And it's only 3.5 feet deep. And it's really just meant to be able to walk in and cool off and hang out. And then there's a spa and a sun shelf area. And so we call it the social pool because we'll have friends and family over, and we'll have 5 people just standing in the pool, and the spa will be overflowing with people, and the little cart of alcohol has been wheeled over to the edge of the pool, and people are laying in the lounge chairs and the sun shelf. And it's just about people getting together and having a good time. There is no swimming. We're just hanging out.
Hanging out, being in the water.
Being in the water. I mean,
Yep.
and there's a fire pit right next to it. So, we'll have people often sitting around the fire pit, conversing with people in the pool. And
standing by the
just,
bar.
Yeah, it's just a gathering.
I've been in your yard. So.
Yeah, it's just a gathering place, so you kind of know what it's like. Yeah.
Cool. So hey, I want to thank you, Dave, for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come out to and meet with me.
Yep, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Ask the Masters podcast, and don't forget to check out our Facebook page each week on Tuesdays for new episodes of the show. I also want to encourage you to stop by the Ask the Masters Facebook page and invite other like-minded individuals to join us there as well. Feel free to jump into the conversations and even post your own questions. We want to create a community which fosters learning and discovery for the betterment of us all. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify. Please be sure to subscribe and feel free to share.